Sara was an extraordinary woman who grew up in a small town near Baltimore, Maryland. The only child of an English teacher and a car mechanic, she had a happy and loving childhood. She was a brilliant student and always dreamed of having a promising future. After graduating high school with honors, Sara enrolled at the University of Maryland, where she excelled in her studies and graduated with a degree in business administration. It was at the university that she met James, a charismatic, intelligent, and ambitious economics student. James was a true gentleman and captivated Sara from the start. They shared a passion for travel, cooking, and jazz, and quickly fell in love. James had an infectious personality, and his zest for life drew everyone around him. Sara was enchanted by James's optimism and passion for life. After graduation, they got married in a beautiful ceremony at the small church in their hometown, surrounded by family and friends. They built a life together in Baltimore, filled with love and harmony. Sara landed a job at a prestigious consulting firm, while James started working at a local bank. Over the years, James excelled in his banking career in Baltimore. His dedication, professionalism, and unmatched interpersonal skills made him an exemplary employee. One evening, after a quiet dinner, James looked at Sara with a different sparkle in his eyes. There was something important he needed to share. "Sara," he began, the excitement evident in his voice, "I've been promoted. They're offering me the position of vice president at the bank in Austin, Texas." Sara, surprised and thrilled, looked at James, her eyes wide open and her heart pounding. "That's amazing, James. But Austin? That's so far away." James nodded. "I know, darling. It's a big change, but it's an incredible opportunity. And I believe we can turn it into a new adventure for us." The following days were filled with long conversations and reflections. They weighed the pros and cons of the move, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. They embraced the decision to move to Austin with hopeful hearts and high expectations. They packed up their lives in boxes, sold their beloved home in Baltimore, and prepared for the next chapter of their lives. The love and trust they had for each other helped them overcome any fear or uncertainty they might have had. Finally, moving day arrived. They bid farewell to their old life and boarded the flight to Austin, Texas. Looking out the plane window as Baltimore faded from view, Sara squeezed James's hand and whispered, "I'm ready for this new journey, as long as we're together." James, squeezing her hand back, replied with a smile, "And I'm ready to face anything as long as you're by my side, Sara." And so, they arrived in Austin, Texas, a new and unknown place, but full of promises and opportunities. They were eager for what the future could bring, armed with the courage to face the unknown together. In the new city, everything seemed perfect. They bought a beautiful house in a peaceful neighborhood, and James was making progress in his career. However, the perfect world they had built together in Baltimore began to unravel in Austin. Sara's life was about to take a turn she never imagined. Upon arriving in Austin, Sara and James were captivated by the city's charm. They found a beautiful red brick house in a wooded neighborhood that seemed perfect to start this new chapter of their lives. James dove headfirst into his new job, excited about the flood of new responsibilities and career prospects. However, for Sara, the reality of her new life was starting to settle in a different way. While James spent long hours at the bank, she found herself alone in an unfamiliar city, feeling isolated and somewhat lonely. Though she was trying to adapt, the silence in their new home often felt oppressive. It was on one of those quiet afternoons that she met Linda. As Sara tended to the garden, a woman around her age with blonde hair and a warm smile approached the fence that divided their houses. "Hi. I'm Linda, your neighbor," she said cheerfully. "I noticed you're new around here. If you need anything, I'm just right over there." Sara, relieved to have someone to talk to, smiled and replied, "Hello, Linda. I'm Sara. It's nice to meet you." In the following days and weeks, Linda became a constant presence in Sara's life. They spent many afternoons together, sharing laughs and stories. Linda was an attentive listener and quickly became Sara's confidant, her only friend in the new city. Even with the loneliness diminishing thanks to Linda's friendship, a cloud of sadness still lingered over Sara. However, she continued to embrace her new life in Austin, hoping that with time, things would start to feel more like home. As the months went by, the enchanting aura of Austin began to fade. James's once always smiling face, which radiated happiness and positivity, started to show traces of stress and fatigue. Work started consuming him, causing him to bring home the tension and exhaustion he felt. The change in James was noticeable. Quiet nights together turned into lonely nights for Sara as James retreated to his office with a bottle of whiskey. The warmth he once exuded had been replaced by an unpredictable temperament. The man Sara knew and loved seemed to be fading before her eyes. One night, after an episode of domestic violence, Sara, with tears in her eyes and a heavy heart, went to Linda's house. "He has never been like this, Linda," she sobbed. "James is becoming a stranger to me. I don't know what to do." Linda, holding Sara's hands, looked at her with a concerned expression. "Sara, dear, I think James is becoming dangerous," she said, her voice low and serious. "And I hate to be the one to say this, but it's possible he's having an affair. If that's true, it could make things even worse. He might become more violent." Sara felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The idea of James having an affair, combined with his changing behavior, was almost too much for her to bear. However, she knew she had to face reality. "What should I do, Linda?" she asked, fear evident in her eyes. Linda squeezed Sara's hands and replied, "You need to protect yourself, Sara. First and foremost, you need to think about your safety." And so, amidst advice and sobs, the two women spent the night planning Sara's next steps. As the days and weeks went by, Linda's house became a refuge for Sara. When the arguments with James escalated and her patience ran thin, Sara sought solace in Linda's friendship. Linda's always open door became a symbol of comfort and security for Sara amidst the storm that had become her life. On one of those nights, after a particularly harsh argument with James, Sara found herself knocking on Linda's door, her eyes red and swollen. Linda welcomed her with a tight embrace and words of comfort. "Sara, dear, I know things are tough right now, but I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm here for you," she said, stroking Sara's hair. With Linda, Sara found more than just a friend, she found a confidant, a mentor, and a safe harbor. They spent hours talking, often late into the night, about everything and anything, Sara's hopes and fears, her increasingly unstable relationship with James, and the uncertain future that awaited her. In each word from Linda, there was genuine concern and affection that only served to deepen their friendship. Sara found in Linda the strength and courage she needed to face the storm her life had become. "We'll get through this together, Sara," Linda would always say, offering Sara the support she so desperately needed. The friendship with Linda became a beacon of hope for Sara in the midst of darkness. In every argument and every lonely night, Sara remembered Linda's words, using them as a compass to guide her through the storm. One night, the tension that hung in Sara and James's house reached a boiling point. James returned from work extremely drunk, stumbling and mumbling incoherent words. His once loving eyes now reflected an uncontrollable rage. That night, for the first time, James threatened Sara. Desperate, Sara ran to the safety of Linda's house, her heart pounding with fear. "Linda, I don't know what to do," Sara whispered, panic evident in her eyes. "He's never been like this. He threatened me." Linda looked at Sara, feeling the pain and fear her friend was going through. She held Sarah's trembling hands and, with a determined expression, said, "Sara, dear, you don't deserve this. No one does. You need to get out of this situation. You need to escape." Linda's words echoed in Sarah's mind. Escape? Could she really leave everything behind? But as she looked into Linda's steady eyes, Sara felt a glimmer of hope. Linda was right. She deserved more, she deserved a better life. "Tell me what to do, Linda," Sara pleaded, determination filling her eyes. Linda replied, "Let's plan your escape, Sara. Let's make sure you're safe and away from James." And so, amidst fear and uncertainty, Linda and Sara devised a plan that would change Sara's life forever. Sara and Linda sat on Linda's small couch, their faces illuminated by the dim living room lamp. Scattered maps, a cup of cold coffee in a corner, and the tension in the air made it evident how serious the discussion was. They were planning Sara's escape. "Sara, we can't be hasty, but we also can't waste any time," Linda cautioned, her tone firm yet caring. "We need to choose a place where James wouldn't think to look for you. Baltimore is out of the question." Sara nodded in agreement. "I know, Linda. I don't want to risk him finding me there. I was thinking of Miami." Surprise made Linda raise her eyebrows, but after a moment, she nodded. "Miami, it's a good idea, Sara. It's far enough away and big enough for you to get lost in the crowd. James would never think to search for you there." And so, in the silence of the night, Sara and Linda began to detail the escape plan. They discussed how Sara would sustain herself in Miami, planned the best route to get there without leaving traces, and talked about the best way to make the transition. "You'll have to be strong, Sara," Linda said softly, squeezing her friend's hand. "It's going to be scary and challenging, but I know you can do it. And whenever you need me, I'll be just a phone call away." With her mind filled with plans and her heart filled with determination, Sara departed from Austin. She left behind the life she knew, the love she had for James, and the home they built together. And amidst fear and uncertainty, she boarded a flight to Miami, embracing the hope of a fresh start. In Miami, Sara faced a completely different reality. The first days were marked by loneliness and longing, but she was determined to persevere. She found a modest job at a small clothing store, a simple place yet full of potential. There, she had the opportunity to interact with clothes, fabrics, and customers, giving her a glimpse into the world of fashion. She was an ordinary salesperson, but there was a special sparkle in her eyes when she talked about fashion. Sara began using her free time to create her own pieces, mixing fabrics and colors in unique and innovative combinations. She sewed at night, under the dim light of her small apartment, letting inspiration flow through her fingertips. On a rainy afternoon, Sara decided to take one of her creations to the store. "Hello, Mrs. Miller," she greeted the manager, an elderly lady with a sharp gaze. "I made something at home. Could you take a look?" Mrs. Miller inspected the piece, a light summer dress with a unique floral pattern. "It's wonderful, Sara," she said, amazed. "Why don't we try selling it here?" The dress was a success. Sold within hours, Sara soon began bringing more of her creations to the store, which became popular among customers. That's when she realized, she had a talent for fashion, and it was time to explore it further. Over the months, Sara decided to start her own brand. The beginning was tough, with long nights of work and constant uncertainties, but each piece sold and every satisfied customer strengthened her determination. Gradually, her brand gained recognition, attracting clients from all over Miami. Sara turned loneliness and despair into creative energy, becoming a successful entrepreneur in the competitive world of fashion. And as her brand grew, she grew too, becoming stronger and more confident each day. Sara had built a new life, a world where she was free to be who she truly was. In her new life in Miami, Sara found a new circle of friends. They were warm and welcoming people who embraced her with open arms and soon became an essential part of her new existence. Still, Linda held a special place in her heart, serving as an anchor that connected her to her past. In the early months, Linda was a constant presence in her life, even from a distance. Sara regularly updated her on her achievements and challenges, laughing and crying over the phone. They shared stories and secrets, comforting and supporting each other. However, as time went by, Sara noticed a subtle change in Linda. Daily conversations turned into weekly ones, then monthly, and Linda's warm tone started to cool off. Sara tried to keep the friendship alive, but it seemed that somehow Linda was growing distant. "Are you okay, Linda?" Sara asked during one of their phone calls, concerned about Linda's increasing coldness. "I'm fine, Sara," Linda replied, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. "I've just been a bit busy lately." The frequency of calls dwindled even further, conversations became monosyllabic, and gradually, Sara and Linda lost touch. Despite the pain of losing her old confidant, Sara continued to move forward, strengthened by the friendships she had built in her new city. 5 years had passed since Sara had left Austin, 5 years of building and growth. Her work in fashion had expanded and required her to travel across the country for business. Fate, in an ironic twist, led her back to Austin. It was a clear, starry night in Austin when Sara decided to go to a local restaurant for dinner. As she walked through the illuminated dining hall, a pair of familiar faces caught her eye. She stopped, her heart pounding in her chest, as she stared at the sight that left her shocked. There they were, Linda and James, sitting together in a secluded corner of the restaurant, the chandelier light reflecting on their faces. They seemed comfortable with each other, sharing laughter and stories. The shock of seeing them together, the betrayal, filled her heart, leaving a lump in her throat. "Sara," the waiter called out, interrupting her thoughts. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little surprised, that's all." She decided not to confront them in that moment, despite the storm of emotions in her heart. Not in that restaurant, not on that night. But she knew that eventually, she would have to face them, and the truths that came with that unexpected reunion. And you? What would you do in Sara's place? Share your opinion in the comments. Back in Miami, Sara was tormented by a tangle of conflicting emotions. She felt a deep pain emanating from such an unexpected betrayal. Unable to bear the torment of not knowing, Sara decided to hire a private detective. She needed answers and couldn't seek them on her own. "I need to know," she confessed to the detective in his modest office. "I need to know when it started. I need to know if they were together while I was still there." The detective, a man with gray hair and expressive eyes, nodded in understanding, promising her answers. Within a few weeks, the detective returned with a complete dossier. The words and images within revealed a shocking truth: Linda and James had been together since Sara had fled Austin. Sara sat silently, examining the evidence presented to her. Photographs, call records, witness statements. They painted a clear and unequivocal picture of a betrayal that had begun long before her departure. The reality of the situation hit her like a punch to the stomach, and she sat in silence, processing the revelation. Her ex-husband and her former best friend, involved in an affair that had lasted for 5 years. She had been betrayed, but now she was equipped with the truth. And with the truth, she was ready to confront the past that had haunted her. Taken by a wave of anger and betrayal, Sara decided it was time for a confrontation. She boarded the next flight to Austin, with a heavy heart and a determined purpose. In Austin, Sara headed straight to the house she once called home, the place where she had dreamed and built a future with James. She waited for Linda to leave and knocked on the door. "Sara," James said, surprised, as he opened the door. He looked different, but his essence, the one she had loved, was still there. "James, we need to talk," Sara said, her eyes fixed on his, determined. However, James, still carrying the anger and resentment of the years, refused to listen to her. "Sara, you ran away," James said, his voice harsh. "Linda told me everything. You had no right to abandon me and run into another man's arms." His words hit her like a blade, their falsehood contrasting with the truth she now knew. She felt the anger rising, but she stood her ground. She didn't run then, and she wouldn't run now. This was a battle she had to fight. Sara remained steadfast, despite James's cold and accusing gaze. "James," she said, "Linda encouraged me to leave. She told me that you were becoming violent and that you could hurt me or yourself. I only started drinking and becoming violent because Linda said you were cheating on me," James interjected, his voice low but intense. "I didn't know how to handle it, Sara. I was angry, but also scared that it might be true because I loved you, Sara." His words echoed in the quiet space between them, each one weighing heavily on Sara's heart. But she knew that the truth had not yet been spoken. "James, I never cheated on you," Sara said, her voice calm and firm. "There was never another man. And I have proof." Incredulity was written on James's face, but beneath that, there was a glimpse of something more, something Sara recognized as hope. "Sara," he began, but she interrupted. "James, please, give me a chance. A chance to prove the truth to you," she pleaded, looking directly at him, challenging him to deny her request. Architecting her plan, Sara went to meet Linda, determined to expose the truth. She found her in the same house she once shared with James, a space now tainted with betrayal. Linda opened the door, clearly surprised to see Sara there. "Linda," Sara said, keeping her gaze firm, "we need to talk." With a smile that seemed more like a mask, Linda pretended not to understand. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sara." But Sara didn't let Linda get away. Pressing her, Sara's words flowed like an unstoppable river, relentless and irresistible. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Linda. About you, James, and what you did to our marriage." In a corner of the modern-styled living room, Linda was pressed against the wall, a contorted painting of guilt and fear on her face. Her evasive eyes couldn't meet Sara's gaze, as silence swallowed the room. Sara's determination felt palpable, a force that filled the space and left Linda with no options. The mask Linda wore, that gentle smile and aura of friendship, now unraveled in the harsh reality of her actions. Finally, Linda lowered her guard. Her face contorted into an expression of resentment and, perhaps, a trace of relief. The confession spilled from her lips like poison poured from a cup. "Yes. I was jealous of you, Sara. Jealous of your perfect life, of your perfect husband. I wanted James for myself." She paused, looking at Sara with defiant eyes. "He was too good of a man, you never deserved him. I did everything I could to ruin your marriage, and I would do it all over again." There was a cold cruelty in her words, a determination that left Sara breathless. But Linda wasn't finished. Her smile grew wider, more triumphant as she delivered the final blow. "And now, you can't do anything. James no longer believes in you. Whatever you say, he won't believe it." Linda's final words echoed in the silent room, a damning sentence to Sara's heart. Linda's words, so raw and venomous, hung in the air like a malevolent shadow. They pulsed through the silence, a brutal echo of deceit and betrayal. But what unfolded next was something neither Linda nor Sara expected. From a dark corner of the room, a figure emerged. It was James, his face pale and marked by the revelation. His eyes were wide and fixed on Linda, a mix of shock, sadness, and anger etched on his features. He had heard every word, every treacherous confession from Linda, and the brutal reality of her manipulation struck him like a fist. With determined steps, he approached Linda, whose eyes widened as she realized his presence. She tried to speak, perhaps an apology, but the words got lost along the way. James raised his hand, silencing her. "I heard everything, Linda. Everything." She stammered, shock piercing through her features. "James, this isn't. I didn't mean to." "Enough, Linda," James interrupted, his voice filled with disgust and anger. "You betrayed both of us. Sara, me. We trusted you." There was nowhere left for Linda to hide, no excuse to be made. James had finally seen the truth, and nothing Linda said could change the course of what was already set. In a whirlwind of emotions, James found himself devastated and deceived, the bitter truth of Linda still reverberating in his ears. He made the inevitable decision and, with one last look of disappointment and sadness, he cut Linda out of his life. With her words still buzzing, it was now James's turn to Sara, his eyes heavy with remorse and guilt. "Sara." He started, a plea in his tone. I'm sorry. I was a fool, an idiot. I need you. Please forgive me. Can we try again, please?" James's words hung in the air, but Sara's response came with a gentle force, carrying the wisdom and resilience she had cultivated throughout her journey of self-discovery. "James," she began, her voice calm yet firm. "I forgive you. You were deceived just as much as I was. But I cannot go back to you. I have changed, James. I have grown, I have become stronger. I love the woman I have become." James fell silent, surprise clearly visible in his eyes. Sara continued, "And despite there still being love between us, trust has been lost. You chose to believe a stranger over me. I don't want to be with a man who doubts me without confronting me first. I deserve someone who trusts me, who fights for me, not someone who easily believes the lies of others." Her words struck James hard, but they were the truth. Sara, the woman he loved, was now beyond his reach, not by a twist of fate, but by his own choices and misguided actions. Sara returned to Miami, but not as the frightened woman who fled from Austin years ago. Now, she was a strong, successful, and independent woman who had reinvented herself from her own ashes. She had learned the importance of prioritizing her own happiness and discovered the strength she had within. She told James, with a serene expression, "And if there's one thing I've learned, James, it's that we must always choose happiness, no matter how scary the path to get there may be." She recognized that James was a part of her past but no longer a piece in her future. By leaving James and Austin behind, Sara returned to her life in Miami, a life she had built for herself, by herself. She emerged from the distressing situation she experienced in Austin to become a successful and respected woman in San Francisco. This is the story of Sara, a story of courage, transformation, and self-discovery. A story about how she found the strength to overcome obstacles and emerge stronger than ever. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and share. The next story on your screen will surely move you. See you in the next video.